Made some big news yesterday, and it really didn't have anything to do with the race that was run midweek this week. It had everything to do with something that was done kind of off the race course itself, off the track, and it has a lot to do with what's going on in society now. And there are a lot of people out there that kind of wonder if it was long overdue. Probably was. NASCAR removing all Confederate flags from racetracks and venues moving forward. It will not be part of the NASCAR identity. How big a deal is this in the NASCAR world? How big a deal is it big picture? Thought we'd bring in a guy that covers NASCAR for a living that's been at many a track over the years with many a Confederate flag. The stars and the bars now barred, Bob Pockrass. How big a deal is this?
Well, it's a big enough deal that I did Al Jazeera TV today to talk about it. So, and I have several radio shows that have called and asked for me to comment. So it's a big deal from that standpoint. It's a big deal when you have the daughter of Martin Luther King Jr. tweeting hashtag NASCAR and then say family. It's a big deal when when you have the New York Times on their news alert for the morning saying, including this in one of their three biggest stories that you should know about for today. That's how big a deal it is worldwide, and it's a big deal in the NASCAR in the NASCAR community, because this is something that I believe probably NASCAR officials probably have wanted to do, but either didn't have the guts to do it really, and were concerned about the bottom line and financials, and we're worried about alienating more fans when they see the number of fans. Look, there's no secret that NASCAR's attendance has dropped over the last 10 years. And so when you have that, the last thing you want to do is alienate more fans. But, I think once NASCAR came out on Sunday and the president tells everyone that the NASCAR president says that NASCAR wants to be part of advocating for change. And then the next day when Bubba Wallace says NASCAR should ban the Confederate flag, that, if NASCAR didn't act, all their, everything they said on Sunday would have rung hollow. They had to act, and they did.
Bob, do you think this happens if Bubba Wallace doesn't voice his concerns, and if Bubba Wallace isn't a driver on the NASCAR circuit and on the Cup circuit right now?
I think it happens, but I don't think it happens this week. Okay. I think eventually at some point it happens. But I do think that, once Bubba said it on CNN that NASCAR had to act, and in some ways it's a good time for NASCAR to be able to act. Now, granted, there are going to be 5,000 fans next week at Talladega, but we're not talking about campers in the infield or camping allowed at racetracks yet. So this gives them time to devise policies, gives them time to notify people. Certainly people who will buy tickets from now on will know the policy. There can't be anything like, well, I bought a ticket and you didn't say this when I bought a ticket. So this is kind of a good time for NASCAR to do it from a practical standpoint. And then I think, obviously with where society is right now, that they won't, or that they feel that this is the right. They've probably known this is the right thing to do, but I think they have confidence that that public opinion is with them more, that this is the right thing to do.
Bob Pockrass with us here on the Bill Riley Show. Not Al Jazeera, but ESPN in Salt Lake City. He's with Fox. He's one of their NASCAR insiders. I worked in Jacksonville, Florida for 6.5 years before I came out here 20 years ago, Bob. And I remember having this conversation then around the Daytona 500 and things of that nature. It's a touchier topic, and it was 20 years ago in Jacksonville, but there was at least talk. And I know the France family and others have looked at this over the years. You mentioned the popularity in the sport has probably dropped nationwide from where it was 10 or 15 years ago, but were they, in your experience, do you think they were ever close to pulling the trigger on this before, or was this really the tipping point they needed?
It's a great question. Steve O'Donnell on Sirius this morning said that there's been some more discussion about over the last year, just, even, NASCAR employees saying, it's really, it's really difficult. There's no way to really defend or to answer the question from people who are outside of the industry saying, why are these flags still flying in the infield? But, I think, as I said, while they may have thought it was the right thing to do, I don't know that they were comfortable with doing it until this week.
So we know that the drivers have come out. We saw they, like every other sport, did their video where everybody's standing against racism and discrimination. But from a fan base standpoint, and you're around it every week when you're at tracks, I haven't been there for years, so it's hard for me to tell. But what kind of an impact do you think this will be? How will this be met by kind of the race-going folks that go to Talladega and Martinsville and Bristol and places like that every week? How will this be met by the NASCAR fans?
Well, I guess right now the only thing I have to look at is my social media. And look, there are fans who say I'm done with NASCAR. I don't either. They just don't want NASCAR to be in something that they the whole stick to sports thing you see. Or, there are people who say, that I should be allowed to fly the flag or, they don't support, some of the, they see the Black Lives Matter scheme and they say, I'm done. And it's hard to know whether they're really done, right? Are they going to just stop watching for a week or 2 weeks, or will they stop watching for 5 or 10 years? But, I think the question is, the question is how many more fans are going to be watching because NASCAR is doing these things? How many more fans are going to say, okay, NASCAR didn't just say they were against racism, they actually did something about it. And Richard Petty Motorsports didn't just say they were against racism, they did something about it. They had this paint scheme. And so, I think this is, obviously remains to be seen, but I think there's a feeling that these decisions now will, can potentially grow NASCAR's fan base.
Well, I said that earlier in the show today. I said, it's always been a predominantly white sport. It just has. You've had a handful of minority drivers throughout the years, but the fans in the stands have been pretty. But now maybe you remove those Confederate flags. Maybe a few more drivers join the circuit. Maybe you get a little bit more of a diverse crowd in there. I'm curious, though, down through the years, drivers, we all know these fans are loyal to a driver, a race car, a race team. Is there a driver on the circuit today? And again, you're with it every day. When I was covering it, it was Earnhardt and then Dale Jr. But is there a driver that could come out, stand next to Bubba Wallace, or make his own statement that could help kind of sway some of the hearts and minds? Is there an Earnhardt type or even an Earnhardt Jr. type that could stand up for this and maybe sway some of the hearts and minds of NASCAR fans? Or is there not that type of driver that there was 25 years ago today?
I think there is, when we talk about this, Dale Jr. has, for 15 years has said that, that the Confederate flag has no place in the sport, and it still didn't get changed till Bubba Wallace said something, this week about it. So I think that shows you that, just how big a deal these decisions are. If you talk about a driver who could, I look at two. I look at Ryan Blaney and Chase Elliott. They're good friends of Bubba Wallace's. They have big social media followings, big fan bases. Chase Elliott's been the most popular driver the last couple of years. And I truly think that, that if they, and again, they were both part of the video. I think that we all know that they're going to be around racing for at least another decade, if not, 20 years. And, and anything that they do and say, I believe at least a section of the NASCAR fan base will rally behind.
Do you get the sense NASCAR is going to police this pretty hard when fans are allowed back in again? Will they be going through the infield and through the crowd, removing Confederate flags?
I mean, I think they will. I think they're going to. I mean, that they'd like to. I'm sure that when they hope to just be able to ask, can you please take the flag down? But look, NASCAR has had for years. They'd have flag trade programs where it'd be like, we'll trade a U.S. flag or a driver flag for your Confederate flag, and there's probably still boxes and boxes of flags at all the tracks. Because nobody would trade for them, very, very few trades would happen. So it'll be interesting to see. Will NASCAR confiscate flags? Will they, and say, we'll give them back to you when you exit? Will they ask people to leave? And look, what's going to happen? I'm sure people are going to be, what if somebody has a hat or, has a shirt with the flag on it or a tattoo of the flag on it? Where does this policy, begin and end are all things that NASCAR still has yet to tell us.
Early stages, but good first step, no doubt about it. Bob Pockrass with us for a moment more here on the Bill Riley Show. Next race is at Miami, if I'm not mistaken, I think on Sunday. When did you say is the first time we're going to begin to see fans allowed into infields or into the grandstands?
So at Homestead, there's going to be 1,000 invitees from a couple of the military bases in the Miami area. So some military personnel and their families. And then Talladega next Sunday, they're selling 5,000 tickets and a few motorhome spots that oversee the backstretch. But 5,000 grandstand tickets. They're available to people who had bought tickets for the postponed race in April and live 150 miles within Talladega. First come, first serve. But, like we were talking, no tailgating. You can't bring in a cooler. You can bring in a bag with food and some drinks, but you can't bring in ice packs with it. You're going to have to wear a mask. So, it'll be interesting to see, how many people, are want to see a race, but are going to be watching a race in a very different experience than what they've been used to in the past.
So for our listeners that aren't familiar with Talladega, give an idea of how big the raceway is. When you say 5,000 people are going to be allowed in, how many would normally be there? How many would normally be there on a race day?
It'd be about 80,000. I think this actually now the stand seat 78,000. They used to have well over 100,000 stands, but like a lot of places, they've taken out a lot of grandstands, but the grandstand stretches along it's probably close to a mile down the front stretch. So, when you talk about 5,000 people in a grandstand that seats 78,000, they'll be able to adhere to social distancing rules pretty easily.
Bob, people ask me all the time. I tell people all the time. I said, if you ever get a chance to go to a NASCAR race, go. I was lucky enough to cover 5 Daytona 500s, and I was at the very first ever Brickyard 400. In Indianapolis, but I always tell people if you get a chance, go. You'll love the experience. Maybe you don't become a NASCAR fan, but you'll have a blast on race day. If you were telling, if you could tell somebody to have the pick of any race or track to see their first NASCAR event, where would you go?
Well, it depends. If they're only going to one, I would probably say the Bristol night race.
Yep.
But if you're planning on going to more, maybe the Bristol night race would be too good, and you'd rate everything against that. I mean, I think Bristol, Richmond, Daytona, and Talladega are just so are so different than everything else, and it's and then I think Phoenix with the package that NASCAR has right now, they put on a phenomenal race there in March, and with the championship there in November. I think it's going to be a great event as well.
I would say for the overall experience inside and out, Daytona and Talladega might be where I would go. But if you're just talking about being in the venue for the race itself, bumper cars under the lights at Bristol is the way to go.
Yeah, I mean, if you talk about infield and party, then you're looking at Daytona, Talladega, Texas, and Michigan.
Yeah, those are all great. And are you off to Homestead, or are you just going to be watching that one from home?
I'm going to probably be watching that from home. We're still limiting our numbers at the racetrack, and we're trying to do a lot of texting and trying to figure out what and listening to in-car radios from what I can at home.
That'll be great. Hey, Bob, I appreciate it. I'm sure you're off to do BBC or some other world news next, but I appreciate you squeezing us in after Al Jazeera today. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Take care. Bob Pockrass with us from NASCAR on Fox, and he's covered NASCAR for quite some time.